in these problems, we're finding percents of numbers or what percent some number is of another number. For example, this first one says, what percent of 1700 is 34? Well, 34 is pretty small compared to 1700, so it's probably some small percent of that number. But how do we find out exactly? Well, I think the easiest way is to convert these into a formula, to kind of translate the words into a formula and then solve that formula. There are a couple of key words you should look out for that will help you write those formulas. The word what, whether you see what percent or what number, that should be our unknown, our variable. So I'm just going to call that x. And when you see the word is, that is going to be our equal sign. And when you see the word of, that means to multiply. With these three keywords, I think you can translate almost any one of these problems. Let's look at this first one. What percent? Well, there's our what phrase, so that's going to be x. Of, that's multiply. 1700 is, that's our equal sign, 34. So there we've done it. We've translated that sentence into an equation, and now I can solve this for x. To solve for x, I've got to undo whatever is being done to x. Right now, x is being multiplied by 1700. So I'm just going to divide by 1700, and then the rules of algebra say I have to do that to both sides. Here, the 1700s cancel out, and we just get x. So my answer is going to be 34 divided by 1700. So let's figure out what that is. 34 divided by 1700. And that's 0.02. So x equals 0.02. That's not a percent. This is a decimal. So there's one last step here, and that is we have to convert the decimal to a percent. To convert a decimal to a percent, you move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So this comes out to be 2%. Let's try another one. All right, this one says, Michael's softball team won 60% of the 65 games it played. How many games did it win? This is a little bit different. It's not quite as easy to translate this into a whole formula like we did there. But this part, 60% of the 65 games, that's how many games they won, and that's what we're trying to find out. So let's just translate that part. So 60%, actually let's convert 60% to a decimal because we need to do our calculations with decimals, not percents. So I'm going to move my decimal point 2 places to the left to convert from percent to decimal. So I get 0.6. So 0.6 of, and remember of is multiply, 65 games played. That is going to be the answer for how many games it won. So let's try that. 0.6 times 65. And we get 39 games. All right, let's take a look at another one. So this one says 90 is 40% of what number? And we're going to just do our thing with writing a formula. I think before I write the formula, I'm going to go ahead and convert this to a decimal. So we'll move that decimal point 2 places to the left there. But we've got 90, and then we've got is, that's our equal sign. And then 40%, we've converted that to a decimal, so that's 0.4. Of is multiply, and then what number? That's going to be our x. So there is our formula. 90 equals 0.4 times x. To solve this now for x, I just have to divide by 0.4. Both sides, of course. So our answer is going to be 90 divided by 0.4. And that is 225. Sometimes people get a little confused when they divide a number and it ends up getting bigger. But you're dividing by a number that's less than 1, that's between 0 and 1. That's always going to happen when you divide by a decimal like that. So x is 225. All right, and there's one final type of problem in this objective. It says, rewrite as a proportion, do not solve, what percent of 41 is 17. So when you're writing a proportion, that's two ratios, two fractions set equal to each other. What we're going to have on one side is the percent ratio. And percent is always something out of 100. 50% is 50 out of 100. 2% is 2 out of 100. So 100 always goes on the bottom. In this case, we don't know what the top is because they're asking what percent. So that's where the x goes. And now they're saying what percent of 41 is 17. the only other part we have to do here is figure out where the 41 and the 17 go, at the top or the bottom. If it's of 41, that's our number on the bottom. Just like the percent is of 100. This is of 41. So 17 out of 41 is going to be the same as x out of 100. That's our proportion for this one. So that's a little bit of work with percents.